Hey guys, what's going on? It's David Avalon here with my co-host Robert Drysdale for the Breaking the Guard podcast, and today we have a very special guest, multiple-time ADCC World Champion, IBJJF World Champion, just an all-around living legend in Jiu-Jitsu, Andre Galvao. Thank you, Andre, for joining me. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
All I
right.
had to.
Yeah. Go ahead,
I'm,
Dave. Kick it off.
I'm sorry, Rob.
No,
I'm just going to start off with one topical news item because I just saw it. The Vinny Magalhaes with Craig Jones. And holy crap, spoiler alert for anybody who didn't see that. Craig Jones won by injury default, I guess. But I don't know if you got to see that, but man, Vinny's foot was turned completely 180. That's totally nuts. What did you think about that, Andre?
Man, I knew like Vinny, it's really flexible. I knew it. I knew that he would resist the heel hooks. It surprised me that he got injured because I saw him before in those situations. He's always like did really well, but Craig did such a great job in a way of like snapping, the heel hook, So it was like Vinny like didn't tap right, but he's a
No, he
warrior,
didn't. He's an
crazy,
absolute
crazy.
savage.
But like he got hurt, like I don't know if he does he like tear his ligament, probably, right?
Well,
probably.
well, from what I saw, it looks like he got an ankle dislocation, which is probably a better thing because his knee wasn't really affected. And he said so. Like I saw, he posted afterwards. He said his knee is fine. He didn't pop
Wow,
his knee at all. He
wow.
said his ankle popped, and that's I guess Craig stopped for a moment because he heard it, and I guess he broke a bone in his ankle.
Ooh, wow, he's so flexible, man. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
You know what it is? It's a testament to Craig's power too, because I've trained with Vinny, I've fought him, I've heel hooked him before. You can't move his foot. It's like trying to move like a metal pole. Like you can't move it. It's just too that the ligament is too strong. Like the foot, the joint is just too powerful. You can't move it at all. I think that Craig must have been applying a ridiculous amount of pressure to do that. Any other human, half the pressure would have done the job, but Vinny's exceptionally strong there. So
Yeah.
it's. I think Craig's heel hooks are really at a different level, man. That's all I can say.
But Vinny, he's like really, really flexible on the joints. Like remember when Fabricio Verdun got an armbar on
Yeah.
him at
Yeah.
ADCC? And Fabricio is huge, he's really tall. So they have such a great leverage, but Vinny like was with the arm like straight like this. And he was there like for like a minute, I don't know, maybe more longer, and he didn't tap. So he has a crazy, crazy joint, flexibility.
Yeah, you can't really attack his joints, man. It's kind of like a waste of energy. It's like
Yeah.
you can't. Craig is the first guy I've ever seen actually win by not by submission like you guys were talking about, by injury from injury in his joint. But like that's unheard of with Vinny.
Yeah.
It is pretty remarkable. I remember watching it. I was like, Jesus Christ. I've had problems with knees, so when I see that foot turn around, I'm like, oh god.
Yeah, that was
But,
crazy.
but not even once. It was two times because he escaped one of them, and then I got it again and turned it. I'm like, oh my
So
god.
they post like a small clip on Instagram, and my
Yeah.
wife like she saw the picture of the video, and she's like watch it, see if it broke. Like I don't want to watch it. She gave the phone to me, and I was watching for her, and she was like, what happened? What happened? That's crazy.
Yeah, man. But Andre, like this is a question you've answered a million times, but like I haven't heard it from you. How are you guys dealing with all this, man? Like you have a team around the world, and I know you're tired of answering this question, but
Yeah.
do you have any strategies that we don't know? Like that's my question. Give me some strategies that I'm unaware of because I don't know what to do. I don't have
Yeah.
any great ideas.
Yeah, definitely. Like it got us like it surprised everyone, right? We have a lot of affiliates and we have a lot of members worldwide. And it's not everyone that has like a big gym, right? Some people they have like smaller gyms. Um, but until now, like everyone is being supporting the team still. We're being like supported them as well. Thankfully, we have the online platform, so we're providing the training there. I send like a code to all the affiliates, so where they can go, even like the students from all the affiliates where they can still like learning jujitsu from there. But we know it's not easy. Like it's not the same like going to the gym and sweat and you know, and have fun with your friends. But we've been like we communicating a lot, like via emails, you know. Um, until now, we didn't have like people that like call us, you know, about it, you know. So we gave suggestions, you know, in the things that they supposed to do. And each place is different, you know. Each place is different. Like California is not the same as Washington D.C.
Yeah.
It's not the same as in Japan. It's not the same in Australia. So everywhere is different, you know. So if I tell people to do what I'm doing here, you know, it's not gonna work where they are, you know. So we just like needs to be smart on that. We gave like tips, you know, in the way of like communicating to students. And we here from Atlas HQ, we provide to all the students from all the association, all the affiliates, the online platform. So that way we help those who owns the gym affiliate,
Yeah.
you know, and the students feel like, oh, you know, we are getting something, you know. So it's what we did here.
Yeah, we do the same thing. I've been doing the same thing, but like, you know, I always joke around like the students are stuck doing the two things they hate the most: warm-ups and positions.
Yeah.
Like the one thing they hate to do, that's what we get to do now. So it's
Yeah.
you know, you got to be really in love with jiu-jitsu to continue training when you can't get to, you know, we like to try to kill each other. That's the fun part, you know, and we're missing out on that.
You know, you imagine how this would have gone down before the internet.
Oh
Because
God. Yeah.
people would have been going crazier. Because,
Imagine before anything, right? Before
yeah.
YouTube, before even like imagine like Paquetá would be rich right now.
That's true. It's true. He's the only one. The only person with content was Pocket Top back in the days. He had every single tournament. He was
Yeah.
below times 10. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good point. But Andre, like, let me you know, we were talking. I was just thinking. I mean, me and sure Dave was thinking the same thing. It's easy to come up with questions for you because you've had a very extensive career. You know, Guy MMA as a coach. You got one of the biggest teams, jiu-jitsu teams in the world, and we can talk about, you know, so many of your accomplishments. But I feel like, you know, maybe Dave wants to ask a thing or two about your accomplishments. But what I really wanted to get into, man, is, you know, really, what is your mindset throughout your career? Because one thing I've always noticed about you, and I've never had that. I wish I had that. You really, really love to compete. You know, to me,
Yeah.
competition was always like an uphill battle. Like I had to force myself on the mats, but it never came easy. It was always like, man, this is so hard for me, right? Emotionally, right? I get too nervous. Whereas you, like, you really like to compete. And I think that is one of the key ingredients for your success. It's not your talent, of course, but also your love, your passion for being tested.
Yeah. Definitely. You know, I always love to compete as the same as I love training. You know, I love to train, and I think that's why I love to train so much because I love to compete too. I think it's a combination, you know, and I put those two pieces together, you know, and we train a lot together. Me and Robert, we become uh, good friends, you know, on the mat. We used to roll every day, train really hard, and I was there every day, training, and I just did that because the love that I have for what I do. You know, jiu-jitsu is definitely my passion. It's what I love most. I believe like this without jiu-jitsu, I don't know what I could do. I was like thinking like, man, like if I need to go and do something else, I know I can do something else, right? But I don't know if I can do it the same passion, you know? So I know I can succeed in other things too if I work hard, but I don't know if I would do in the same way as I did in jiu-jitsu because it's something that I really like and I really love it. And when I was going for a tournament, I was already expecting the feeling of winning the tournament. You know, I never focused in the feeling of losing the tournament. You know, I was like going to a tournament with the feeling like, man, like this is one match that I'll do that I'll have that feeling of winning if I win this match. So I was like putting that feeling before I started the match, and then I was like already happy, you know. super motivated. I never was like worried about like, oh, I can do this, I can do that. Oh, maybe I'll lose, maybe not. I was like so prepared all the time that I was always happy. And when I had like someone tough in my bracket, like when I was blue belt, purple belt, I was happy because after I defeat that guy that was really tough in the bracket, I knew that my coach would be proud. I knew that my friends would be proud too of me. I knew all that. And of course, the other way around happened too. The time that I was there and then I couldn't do really well and I end up losing. But of course, like nobody likes to lose. We didn't born to lose, right? Every time you go to do something, you have the positive mentality. But uh, I just like love so much the pleasure of winning way more than the pleasure of losing because there's no pleasure of losing, right? So I was always with this mindset, like, man, I'm so happy. And I remember like that feeling when you step on the first place of tournament, man, it's amazing. You feel like really good. And it was any tournament. Robert knows, like I used to compete like every weekend in Brazil, every single weekend. Uh, from my white belt days until my third year of black belt until 2008. It was my last worlds before I do MMA. So during all that time from 1999, 1998 until 2008, I was there like every weekend. Like I was trying to find a place, a tournament to fight, because man, I had such a joy. And then the friends that I made after the fight, the lessons that I learned after the fight too. And I was a guy that I always like to test myself. And I remember like I joined tournaments where I was a blue belt and I was competing against black belts no gi. And I always like to test myself. And sometimes of course like I lost, right? But right away I was like trying to fix my mistakes. So I always have that pleasure of like winning, of course, but training hard to become good. But I think the key is like the joy that the training and the competition gave me. So I think I never been like negative. I believe that's my strength. I always look towards the bright side of everything every time that I was fighting.
So it sounds like you're rewards based, right? Because most people, they say they had to choose between a positive outcome or avoiding a negative outcome, they rather avoid a negative outcome, right? They're
Yeah.
risk averse. So this makes them less likely to get big goals, but they're less likely also to fail big. Whereas everything you're saying is kind of what you would expect for someone who's a high achiever, that
Yeah.
your goals, you're reward based. You're going out for the big trophy. You're going out for the. You're not afraid of taking the risk and failing. I think
No.
that's something that everybody can definitely learn from, because I think most people, when they're going to a grappling tournament, the fear is what's driving them. They go, oh, I don't want to lose. I don't want to upset my team. I don't want to make
Yeah.
coach feel bad, and that puts all the pressure, right? Like if you strip that away and you're just focusing on winning
Yeah.
and the joy, and that's great that you mentioned that too, like because you're tying the emotion. You're saying that you anchor yourself to the feeling of winning,
Yeah.
which I think it's a very strong mental like imprint, versus just, oh, I want to win a trophy. Like, no, you're like encapsulating the feeling of what it's like to be the champion and to be standing on the podium. It just makes the goal stronger. So, because I know we interviewed a few people who they talk about how they're scared of training or they're scared of competition and all that. But it's good seeing it from the other point, because obviously you're like a natural born competitor. You enjoy stepping in and trying yourself. So I think those people can do with listening to what you're saying as far as like just enjoying the competition. Like I know myself, like I kind of identify with you. I've always liked competing. I started with wrestling, and in wrestling you compete like every other day, so you get used to competing and you enjoy it. And even the matches you lose sometimes, if it's a good battle, I'm happy with that. Like if I get to scrap with somebody and we go back and forth, there's no shame in that.
Yeah.
I know, Rob. I know, Rob. You're on the other side of this, right? Like you're a little
Yeah,
more.
no,
risk-
I was gonna follow that up with Andre because, like, you know, it's to me it was an effort in the sense where I told myself I had to, you know, but like the pressure and the punishment in my own head if I lost was so severe that
Yeah.
with me it wasn't even what other people are gonna think of you. I don't care. It was a kind of like punishment I would inflict on myself if I didn't perform to my own standards.
Yeah.
Right? Like you have a standard you set for yourself, and if you're below that, I was always really hard on myself. So my question to Andre was going to be: was this something that came naturally to you? Were you ever? Because I remember we met when you were a blue belt. I don't know if you remember,
Yeah.
right? Like we were both really young and like way back in the day, and but I remember like at the time when we started training with Terere, I would bump into you in every single tournament.
Yeah.
And during that period, you were very active, right? That's the beginning of your career, right? Blue, purple. You were every competition, you were there. How natural was this to you? Would you say this is part of your personality, or is it one of those things that you had to shape over time? Like, talk about that journey of becoming how you are, because I'm sure that a lot of people struggle with that as well.
Yeah. Um, you know, I was like training so much. I was like so happy, like learning jujitsu, that I was like trying to test myself all the time. And you mentioned one thing that I start thinking right now. It was like you when you go to a tournament, like you have a 50% of chance to win or lose, right? It's like 50-50. You never know what can happen. And that's why you have that excitement inside you, like that, like the butterflies, right? You just like feel that. And I felt that too, even though I was super motivated, looking towards like the bright side, I still have that feeling because you just like, like you don't want to get hurt, like you don't want to get surprised, right? But once you start controlling everything, everything's like kind of start getting normal to you. And I remember like when, let's say, every time that I lost, I never stopped training. Like a lot of people, they lose and they just feel like, oh, like right now I'll just take a vacation. I just gonna like be away from the mats. I need time to relax. I need to rest. Like I always like I remember when I fought my first tournament as a black belt. I fought here at Pans, but my first year as a black belt, I had like 2 or 3 months of black belt, and I fought the World Cup, the one that you won. You beat Margarita, right? The one that you won. Robert won that one. 2005 it was my first year as a black belt. I lost by ref decision to Guto Campos, right? Man, the same night I went to the gym. I had the key of the gym. I opened up the gym and I was there like training and drilling. Like doing like 2-3 hours. I was training and rolling with my girlfriend was my wife and some guys that was in the gym. And they like, man, and I was pissed, but I was motivated. And then the week after, I went to Worlds and then I won all fights via submission. So I always like felt that like super super motivated, like winning or lose, like both ways like motivate me, right? Um, but like I feel like a lot of people they think that they put so much pressure on them, that they feel like they're obligated to win. Another thing that I feel that motivates me, Robert, I don't know if I'm answering your question or not, but I'm just adding things here. But is I remember when I used to go by myself to fight, and everyone in the venue was cheering for the guy from the local guy, and I was the guy from the outside. Man, that motivates me so much. I love to fight like that. I love to fight like I love like they're like cheering, 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 and then like you sweep the guy and finish him, and everybody's quiet. Man, like I love this feeling, I love this. And then like, man, it's amazing. And I remember I did that so many times, so much. That's why when I go to fight, for example, a super fight, and then people put a lot of all the beliefs and all the credit in that guy and not on me. These motivate me so much, to go out there and just make everyone be quiet. And it's just like, what? So I always have that feeling. So, and I think like it's all about your mindset. It's all about like the perspective, the way you see things. Like for example, like I know that there are people like they're freaking out at this moment right now, of course, right? They don't know what to do. Like what the heck, like But if you only see the bad side, of course you gotta see the bad side sometimes, right? So you can make the right steps. But if you just look at that side, it's you be frozen. You can't move. So you gotta have that hope. So I always see the bright side. I always keep motivated because I don't really know if things will get worse or if you get better. So I prefer to see the bright side where I'll feel like, okay, so I'll pass through this. I passed so many things in my life. I think like this is will be one more thing that, if things goes like wrong in that way that let's say worst case scenario, we need to close the gym, jiu-jitsu is no more in the world. So I'll find a way to do something. I'll find a way. So what I can do, I just gotta move, right? So that's how I think, Robert. I don't know if I answer your question,
No,
but
it's
that's
good.
how I
I think that you do have, whether you realize it or not, you have like a very, very positive outlook on things, and I think that's fundamental because I became more and more aware of this as I've gotten older. Like I think when I was younger, I was less aware, but like now I see the importance of tasting victory. You have to taste it. You have to feel even before you step on the mats, and it's hard to explain to people because I know what you're talking about. I've had performances when I'd step on the mats and I'm like, I'm not losing today. I just feel it. I know it, right? I know it in my heart. It's my day to win. And there are days I walk in there, I'm like, I don't want to be here, And
yeah,
like the trick is like, how do you get your mind into always wanting to be there and
yeah,
feeling the excitement of victory that's like right ahead of you versus allowing like the negativity to take over. And I think that's a very unique talent that not everyone has. I think you can all develop it over time. We can improve on it, but
yeah.
I think it's probably one of the key factors for success in anything you do.
I
Yeah.
think so. I guess to follow up with that, Robert, Andre, like, do you have any rituals or whatnot that you do to whenever you go to compete? Because I find like what Robert is saying is true. Is like getting in the mindset, as they call it, the zone, so to speak,
Yeah.
is a key to being performing at your top level. Because when you're in your zone, I've been in that state a few times, and it's like you're unstoppable at that point. Like you're the best you're ever going to be. So, and I know in golf they tell them, to get the perfect swing, you have to capture that mindset when you hit that perfect swing, and
Yeah.
always get into it every time you swing.
Yeah.
So there's always a trick, and usually there's rituals or whatnot that people do. So I'm just curious if there's anything that you always do every time you compete and perform
Sure,
well.
sure, yes. Throughout my career, like with the experience, I improved that. I think, like I think I got better on that, right? Because I remember when I was younger, right now, like when I was like a white belt competing, a blue belt. So I remember like I was nervous, but then like I started like doing a lot of burpees, like slap my face and like breathe hard, and I was like, oh, I was like trying to like make the nervous go away. But truly, you can't make that nervous go away. It's you just need to warm up really well. And I remember like the first fight is like the fight that you kind of like warm up not only your body, your lungs, but also you warm up your nerves. Like you like after you pass that, you kind of like feel like okay, so now let's go. You know, the first one is like the fight that you just like oh my god. So, but like my ritual is I try to be surrounded of good people like my family. Um, Thankfully, I'm with my wife since 2004. She always like with me all the time, help me. But before that, I have my mom, my dad, my brothers, and also like when I used to go to Cantagalo, I used to stay with Terere and friends. And like I just like to. I always sleep well before the tournament. So a lot of people they can't sleep and all that. I always sleep really well because I was happy that I knew like next day was the day of like doing my best and show my work right to the world. I like to eat well. Like if I need to cut weight, of course I pay attention what I eat. But if I don't, I just eat a nice pasta, or carbs in the morning. And then like I don't take like any lunch. Let's say for fights like afternoon, I don't eat like lunch. Just have like like a plate, like a food like rice and everything in the morning. But no meat. I don't take meat. I take like more like fish or like nuts, you know. And then of course I watch fights. Before I used to watch fights of people that I was looking up to, you know. Nowadays I watch my fights and I watch like great athletes. I never focus in my competitor or the person that I'll compete against. Like I study my opponents because if you see all my career, I have good strategies like in a way to win fights because I know the game of my opponent, of course. But I do that like months ahead, months before, especially if I know. But when the bracket is released, it's usually like the week of the tournament. That day is the only day that I study every single opponent, and then all the other 5 6 days that I have, I just focus 100% in myself. That's it. So I know like their games, but I know like I gotta focus in my fights, and of course I watch other fighters like with a good technique. And sometimes that maybe happen with you. Like you fighting, you're training, and then you do a move, and then you're like, dang, I just watched this move. I'm here doing that. So you're not even drilled that, you just watch it. So it happened a lot with me. And I like to watch like motivational stuff. Like I like to watch like Michael Jordan highlights. I like to watch like great athletes like highlights, where I see them like you talk about golf, of course. Like I watch like Tiger Woods highlights, like he's a great athlete. Um, and I try to play golf. You talk about golf. I tried to play golf before, man. It's so hard. Trying to hit girls and everything. I was trying to swing. I was like, think about a Brazilian playing golf. It's so hard. So, and then I'm like, man, this is so hard. That's why they make so much money. It's so hard. Imagine it's adrenaline and everything. But yes, that's what I try to do. And then I try to go to movie theaters, eat a good popcorn if I don't need to cut weight. I just like to enjoy because the day before, like, or the day off is the easiest part. It's the easiest. The week of the tournament is the easiest one. You already did everything that you're supposed to do. I like to train in the week of the fight. I like to close my eyes and train with my eyes shut, just to feel like have a lot of feeling, not worry about too much the things that I see. And of course, like pumping up like myself with good music. So I always like try to enjoy and put in my mindset and my mind, my heart in a way that I have so much joy, like that feeling of victory. So I always done that and it works really well.
That's great.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting all that. That's pretty amazing. And it just goes to your point that essentially you're trying to be happy all the time.
Yeah.
It seems like common sense now that I think about it. Like, yeah, if you're happy, you're probably going to be doing better and feeling better and
Yeah, I,
everything
I tell
else.
this to I tell this to my students sometimes. I say, guys, like no one can stop a happy person. Like if you're so happy, if you have so much joy, you're so positive, right? Like if you're like happy, you're positive, right? Like all the when you're really sad, when you don't know, like then you can start like, oh, I don't know, like, but when you're happy, nothing can stop you. Nothing can stop you. And I always try to put myself on that like scenario, where because the mind is tricky, like the mind lies to you a lot. And I learned that since the beginning, and a lot of times I kind of like rebuke bad thoughts, because sometimes you're there and then like I remember like sometimes you find then you imagine the guy like giving a guillotine on you. You're just like, shut up. Like no, this is lie, this is doesn't exist. Like let's go. And then you change right away, you change. Instead of you like accepting the guillotine, is you like getting the guillotine, but you already like taking down cartwheel and passing the guard. You know what I mean? Like you always like doing something, like you prepare yourself for the worst as well, because think it's not gonna be so easy all the time. I visualize myself a lot as well, like in good spots of the fight. Imagine my arm getting raised, but also I imagine myself escaping from like bad submissions and like getting out, not giving up. And keep fighting to the end. And just doing that before a tournament, sometimes you have the adrenaline feeling
Yeah.
pumping up. Like even like if it's days ahead, you feel that, and I think it's good. And a week before, I just like I get that zone. like where like I just like happy, I'm happy, but at the same time I'm focused, so I just feel that. I remember one time, like, look, I give you this an example, and I give this an example to my students as well. I remember one time when I signed the lease from the new gym, right? Atlas headquarters, like 7,000 square feet. It was the dream of my dreams. Okay, the gym of my dreams. I was so happy when I signed because it took me 2 years to find a spot. And that day I decided to train. Man, I was so happy. It could be anyone to train with me. I would like tap that person at least 3 times. I was I was in such a joy. I was like, man, everything I was doing was working. Wow. I'm like, I was so happy. So I think like you gotta put your mind in that stage, in that mode, where you're beast mode, but also you're happy, because if you drive to the other side, if you drag your mindset to the other side, it's not gonna be fun, and people feel like, oh, have fun, but you don't know how it is to be there, you know. If you there was like times that I kind of like didn't do my ritual like in the proper way. I didn't have my mind like set up in uh the proper stage that I supposed to be. That like caused me like like that feeling of, oh my god, But every single time, like most of the times that I put myself in that stage where I'm so happy, so thankful for everything, and for all the training that I did, all the hard work that I did. I was like prepared mentally for sure, because I think this is more important than your train, itself, like by itself. So it's
I
in my,
agree. I agree. Andre, you mentioned a minute ago, like, first of all, like, beautiful description of visualization. Me and Dave has talked about this a lot, and we're on board with you. I think that's such a key ingredient of performance. Underrated, in my opinion, right? But I wanted to, like, you mentioned something a minute ago about like being in the Cantagalo with Terere, and I remember those days with a lot of nostalgia. Right? In Portuguese, we use the word saudades.
yeah,
Can't translate it to English. Nostalgia is the closest thing to it.
yeah.
But it was a really good time, man. And I said this in a recent interview. I think, Terere is probably the best coach I've ever had. And I have a lot of love and respect for all my coaches. But Terere, he really had a special energy about him. And I'm not saying this to blow smoke up your butt, but you remind me a lot of him. I think you guys are very similar in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Whereas you bring a lot of energy everywhere you go. Like, you have the charisma. And I was wondering if that's just more of an accident, or did you learn that from Terere? Because he seemed to create that sort of energy in the room.
Definitely, I learned a lot with him. I learned a lot. Technique wise, but also like I learned a lot about believing myself with him more. You know, he was really really special for sure. Definitely like a great coach, and um, Terere was amazing fighting as well. So he knew it. He knew how to fight. And he knew how to put that joy as well, during the fight and with the beast mode. I'm more towards the beast mode than him. He was like more like But yeah, definitely I learned a lot with him for sure. We talk a lot before, and there was times that when I was like brown belt, almost black belt, I was kind of like, man, like from brown to black is such a huge difference. So I don't know how the future will come, like it's gonna be. And he always encouraged me, having the right people like around you, it's really important as well. People that will encourage you, not like no, you're the best, everything will be okay. No, saying the truth, saying the truth, because everyone can come and say, oh, you're gonna win, don't need to train. A lot of people do that. I don't think that's the right way, right? But I think like in a way of like, man, you're well prepared, you're amazing, and I believe you. So we are together. I'll be there for you. So I always learn a lot with him for sure from him. Um, but even like nowadays, like sometimes I go fight, he send me a text. Like he say, hey, watch this, watch that, oh, pull guard, oh, stay on top. Sometimes he give me tips. Even though he's not active, but he's pay attention to everything. So he's amazing. Definitely, like I'm very thankful for his life and everything he done for the sports as well.
You know, you've done something, Andre, that not only are you, in my opinion, I think you're the GOAT right now.
Oh, thanks.
Right? I think not only because you've won, you know, gi, no gi, you won ADCC, and you've also won multiple super fights now, but you've also done this in multiple weight classes. You know, so I think to me that, like a lot of people, and they say Marcelo is the GOAT. I don't think so because he's never done well fighting people outside of his weight class. But you have done well all around, and I think that puts you in a league at the top. But not only that, you're also one of the most successful coaches. So you've done like a Dan Gable type thing, where not only were you a world class competitor, but now you're also a world class coach. Like, what do you think? Because not most competitors don't really translate well into coaches because they know how to internalize their processes, but some people don't know how to explain that and pass it on to somebody else. Whereas you obviously have been able to do that really well. When I guess, what types of things are you passing on to your students that you feel is making the biggest impact? Maybe something that other people aren't doing.
Yeah, I think like people are different. You know, people think differently. Um, like right now, I'm sharing like what I like to do or what I used to do to fight and all that. How I prepare myself and everything. But people are different. Like you probably like done like something like similar, you know, but not the same. Right? People are different, and you gotta respect that, of course. But you gotta also recognize like when your athlete is being lazy or when he's being real, you know, or when he needs to push himself or when he needs to slow down. You know, I was the type of person that Terere used to come to me and say, "Slow down, man, slow down." You know, so he was like being real with me. He's like, "Man, like calm down. You're gonna get overtrained," you know. And I didn't understand that. But there are some guys that it's like, "Hey, man, you gotta do a little bit more here," you know, so you can get your goal. You know, so in everywhere, I think in school is the same way too. There are some people that, of course, like giving, cheering for them and motivate them, saying like encouraging words, of course, helps a lot. Um, but also, you need to understand, and that's why it's good for the coach to have a good relationship with the athlete that he has. And it's pretty hard when you have like 20 guys on the mat that they all like really good. When you have just two or three, it's kind of like easy because you set up like a nice dinner, a barbecue, just you three. But every time that I need to set up something, I need to do a party. It is hard like to talk with everyone, you know what I mean? So I just give my message like during the training, like when we line up before and after classes. I try to give a message. Maybe like there is one person that needs to give a message, but I talk with the group and then someone else can get that message as well. Right? Sometimes it's private as well because it's not like everyone that can get the message, you know, the way that you want to explain. Sometimes you call the person, can I talk to you? And then you talk and then you see like what's going on. Because you need to have that feeling, you know, like when the person it's really willing to train or not, or if the person is being lazy or not, right? For example, I give you two examples here. I can give an example of Kaina Duarte, right? He's amazing. He's really good. Man, like he doesn't train too much, you know. He trains a lot. When he trains hard. But like he say, Professor, he texts, Professor, my body's sore. I gotta like just rest and sleep. I'm like, okay, all right. And it works like that, you know. He wasn't the guy. He wasn't the guy that the type of athletes that you need to push really hard in order like to make him like really sore and then like feel that he's working hard. First, he's big, right?
Yeah.
He's heavyweights. They usually train less, and also they have less fights. Lightweights, they have more fights. Like lightweight blue belts have like 7 fights, you know, at Worlds. But heavyweight blue belts have like maybe 4 fights, you know. So you gotta like understand. And because I compete in different weight divisions, I pretty much like knows like how the bracket works, what works to become a champion in that division. You know, when I was like blue belt with 70 years old, I was like featherweight. You know, I used to cut weight to be featherweight. And then I went up to like middle heavy as a black belt. So I know like the middle half you like have last fights, but of course I fought a middle half when I was brown belt. I fought a middle half a couple times when I was purple belt as well. But I used to fight absolute a lot as well. You know, I always compete weight and absolute. So everything that I passed in my career, I think gave me the you know the capability to be on the feet, you know, on the shoes of my athletes, you know. So I be in that path, like I know what's going on with your mind. I be in that path where I wasn't winning for a year, and then I start win. Then I start feeling like, oh, you know, I'm really good, you know. And then like you start like you guys slap in their face because you're being like so like arrogant, let's say, you know. And then you gotta be humble again. So you need to like manage all that with your athletes because at the end of the day, it's the mindset to train, the mindset to compete, and the mindset to see things, the mindset, the way he sees things, right? The way he sees opponent, and the way you see the training, the way you see the tournament. So it all depends according like to the way you see things, you know. And I believe that I passed through a lot of things. Like I compete when I was sick, you know. I compete when I was hurt, you know. Like I train when I was while I was hurt, you know. I know the feeling. I know I passed through all that, and I spend so much time on the mat. And sometimes people they think this is they just see the side that you're winning, right? But they don't see like everything that you pass through. But I passed through a lot of things, you know. I remember like times that I was sick, like having diarrhea, cramps, you know, because I was dehydrated. But I never denied uh, myself in saying I'm not gonna compete, you know, because nobody came to me and say, hey, you can't compete like that. What happened? I went there like that and I end up losing, you know, or I have like a broken rib and I was like, no, I can't compete, I can't fight like this. But I couldn't fight, I couldn't move, and I ended up losing, even though I didn't lose like badly, but I lost. You know, so you just need to have the right people telling you. And I think the role of the coach is give you tips like that, you know. So hey, this is my opinion, but at the end of the day, it's your choice. If you want to go, go, you know. Also, like it depends on the tournament too. There's only one worlds every year, or one in one ADCC every 2 years. So are you fighting or are you gonna wait for 2 more years? You know, like it's your decision. You know, it's your decision at the end of the day. But you put on a scale all the time, because also what people does like they always say, oh, when they lose is because of their coaches or their training partners or whatever. But when they win is because themselves. You know, so you know, like it's always like that, right? So you gotta be real. You gotta tell the truth, always the truth, and see the way you see things. And then I think when two like think together, and thankfully, my wife also she's a great competitor, right? And she passed through a lot of things like that too. And sometimes me and her like we're together like helping those athletes, you know, and we go to a decision, you know, in this type of decisions, you know, like maybe like if they're injury or not. But I believe like the path that I walked through all my career, and thankfully I compete a lot because I love. I think helped me a lot. You know, I put myself in different situations, and I think at the end of the day, for any leader, the key is communication, right? So you gotta make sure you have a good communication with your athletes because if you don't, things cannot be good, right? So communication is everything.
Absolutely. I feel like one thing I wanted to touch on was the overtraining because I know coming from a wrestling background, I've always overtrained. and, I
Yeah,
didn't, and I've always felt that I've had the problem of tempering myself, of saying, like, I got to stop training at this point. And because my brother and I were our own coaches for most of our career, we
uh-huh.
didn't have that outside voice saying, hey, you need to slow
Exactly.
down. You
Yeah,
know, it was two competitors looking at each other. So, like, if I slow down, he's looking at me like, oh, you're being weak right now mentally.
yeah,
I'm like, oh, I got to step up and push harder.
yeah.
You know, so it's only something I learned like in the past few years, like, oh, you know, there is such a thing as saying it's okay, you can stop without being a pussy. Yeah, it's possible, because in my head that was the image. If I stop training, I'm like, oh, I'm weak. You know, I'm not pushing through this. You know,
And
so
one thing that Terere used to say this: the resting day is a training day. So you gotta rest to recover to train, you know. So you say like the rest time is also a training. It's part of the training, you know. So it's true.
Hey,
absolutely.
hey,
And
Andrew, really quick, how are you for time, man? Because I know you had discussed like you have a class today. Like, how are you for time?
Right now, what time is it right now? Two.
2:18.
2:18.
I can hold a little bit. Yes, I can go up to like 3 o'clock.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Yeah, because my coaches will be there. I just like to be and show up, you know, sometimes like to talk with the students, but we can talk more.
All right. All right. Hey, Andre, just going back to the today, because I remember that period very well. I wanted to hear your thoughts on this.
Mm-hmm.
Because today is also it's almost like a case study, because you have someone who's exceptionally talented, you have someone who's exceptionally charismatic, exceptionally successful, has what I considered to be under him at the time probably the best team in Brazil. What went wrong? Because you would think that from the outside, you would look at that picture and you would go, how could things be better for that guy? This guy has everything going for him, right? Especially where he came from and where he was going, right? And, I think it's like a lesson for all of us. I think everyone needs to learn something from that, because, it doesn't matter where you are. Like you're never really in a position of complete safety and security. And with Terere, man, like you were there the whole time. I was there. I remember that process really well.
Yeah.
What went wrong?
Yeah, so I think like like the good thing is when I had the period of time where I had a coach, right? Like into 2008. Then I started MMA. When I came back, I put myself into today's spot, because Terere, when he opened his gym and when he started his team, he didn't have anyone above him. He was the one like make all the decisions, training wise, for the future of the team and everything. And it's not easy. It's not easy. So and like Terere too, right? Like he's a guy that he have a really strong opinion, really strong mind, right? And sometimes like if you just try to aware him of something, he was just like, shut up, man, let me do like like just like this, he has a lot of authority, and it was hard like to sometimes like make him listen, he's very exceptional, very special. But I think like when you don't have someone like above you, it's really hard for you, because like you start like thinking that whatever you do, it's the right way, right? But sometimes it's not. So like he start like getting like so popular, winning everything with a great team and all that. And like the same thing happened with me too. Maybe the same thing can happen with you or happen with you as well, where like you feel really good about the work that you're doing, and you think like everything is going right because things are showing the right results, the results that you want. But like people sometimes they think that they can divide their lives in two. And I read about this and I see this, and even there are quotes about this. They say you have your professional life and you have your personal life. So you yourself as an athlete and you yourself as a normal person. But at the end of the day, both are one. You just one. You can't divide that, because everything that affects in your personal life will affect your performance when you're an athlete. And also your performance in the tournament also can affect your personal life. Your performance as a successful businessman or a man like that fails, that can affect your personal life. So I believe like it was hard for him to manage both. And the time that he was like professional, it was really professional. But the time on the personal side, he didn't have, I think that in that time, he didn't have someone to like slow him down of things, you know, and say things like, hey, be careful here, be careful there. Because he was young. He was only 24 years old, man. Or maybe 23, I think 24 when everything happened. You know, imagine like you're 24 years old, you have like the best team, you winning, you know, and everyone come and man, he was and man, like Terere used to date a lot of girls, man. You know, he used to date a lot of girls, like you know, like handsome black guy, you know, like champion, and you know, and then together with the success, you know, the bad things comes as well. You know, when you plant like wheat, you have like the other that what is the name of the thing that grows with the wheat? You know, like o joio. Como que é o joio? O joio trigo.
Uh, the wheat
The
and
wet and the wheat and the wet.
help me out here. Yeah, the wheat. What's the bad part of the
Yeah,
looks like wheat, but it's not. I forgot the name.
yeah, exactly. So that you know, people know, you
Yeah.
know, right? The wheat, o joio e o trigo, né? Wheat and wet. I think it's wet, and it was hard to separate because together come grow both, and then you need to separate, you know. And I think that was something that he couldn't like stop, you know, because he was like doing things by his own. He was so young, you know, and we don't blame him. I don't blame him at all, you know, because he was really young, right? But that taught me, and not only me, maybe like everyone that was there, you know, like all the champions that were there back then, taught us something like no matter what, where you are, like no matter what you have, things can fall apart if you don't pay attention, you know. So and you know, unfortunately, like together with like parties and all that, like you have like you know the bad side, the drugs and all that. So and it doesn't combine with an athlete, you know, and a coach. So we all know what happened. Like people can make a research. I'm not here gossiping or anything. I'm just saying the truth and the things that I know, and I love him and I talk to him a lot. We've been good friends until nowadays, you know. But um, now he's just like living his life. Maybe he feels happier than before. Maybe you know. I'm not like on his skin, but probably like he learned a lot with that. He learned about people. He learned about like listening. He learned a lot. You know, like a lot. I believe like when things doesn't go accordingly like to the way that you think or the way that you expect, you always learn. You're always gonna learn. You see the big picture, you know. And sometimes the only way for you to see the big picture is when you're down below, you know, and not when you're at the top. So you gotta be like down and look like from the bottom. Sometimes it's like that, and then we start over again.
Yeah, it seems to be an unfortunate consequence that people will only learn when they're rock bottom, right? That's where like people have serious changes in their life, which can then become a good thing, right? As you said, like you look at the silver lining in the cloud, where when you're at the top of your game, it's hard to learn because you think you know it all. You think
Yeah,
I'm the king. Why should I have to change? I'm doing great. But
yeah,
then yeah, you get the humbling that comes with falling down. But then maybe that's the opportunity to grow as a person.
yeah. And then even like just speaking about that, Robert, you make that question for me. For me, it's not easy to talk about this. You know what I mean? Because people judge you. You know, they say, "Oh, you see what he says." No, it's just like it happened. You know, it happened,
You know,
and, and I
yeah,
learned
go
about
ahead. Sorry.
you know. And I think like the key is one thing that I try to do too, and I love to do is to learn. You know, like the same way, Robert. You know, like you saw my jiu-jitsu back then. You saw my no gi back then, and now you see my no gi now. You know, like the way I used to compete before and the way that I compete now. It's always getting better. You know, because I open myself to learn and to listen to. You know, and a person that I have that really like make me like wake up, like just give me like, hey, wake up, you know, hey, go back here, you know, you start because look, you're moving this way, and suddenly you start like, you know, going out of the path, like it happens, and then like you need to like, opa, let's go back. Like thankfully, I have my wife, man. You know, I always say that she's a very strong woman. thankfully, like, she's the one that, like, always, like, you know, she knows, like, she's wise, you know, she's wise. She has that feeling. So, and I always honor her. And a lot of people say, man, you just talk about your wife, but man, it's true. Because I don't think if I was by myself, you know, because I'm not saying that I never done like any bad choices in my life, of course, like in my career. I done before. You know, there was a moment in my career that I was like trying to party as well, trying to like girls and, you know, champion, you know, drugs and all that, you know. But I know that I was like awake right away. And you know what wake me up? It was what happened with Terere, because it was like that time, you know, we were all like, you know, in that glamour. And then, oh, it was just like, oh my God, you know. And then like, uh, not only I wake up, but also like together with this, I found like such a great woman that support me a lot. And um, maybe you can do that by your own, yes, but I believe that the teamwork is always better. Two is better than one. You know, I believe two is better than one, and it's always great to have like a different perspective, vision of life. You know, and my wife is the one that helped me a lot with that, thankfully.
Well, mathematically, what you said is true. Two is greater than one. So I
Yeah.
think we can agree. And I definitely believe that it helps center you, or having somebody, and whether, you know, whoever it is. Oh, it looks like he might have dropped out. Hold on, let me.
It's battery.
It could have been. I'm gonna go and add him back in. Hopefully, we get him in. But yeah, I know. Well, a lot of people, when they have a good woman or, you know, good husband, whatever the case is, it definitely helps center you. My brother was one of those as well. When he met his wife, Rima, it definitely helped bring him together and
Yeah.
like level him out.
It's like we sharp each other, we help each other. You know, it's just like, you know, you can like like Angelica always said that she'd say like, I came to I didn't come to compete, but I came to cooperate. You know, to be from the same side. You know,
Yes.
they never like, because sometimes nowadays people they try to fight, you know what I mean? Like even if they have a relationship, no, you gotta do what I like, you know, this and that. I think it's a balance, like one help each other. Right. And of course, like if she knows like if I succeed, she'll succeed as well, you know. And if she succeed, I'll succeed as well. So just like that.
Yeah, I definitely think it's an important part is the teamwork, right? Like you said, it's true. A lot of people are competing with their significant other, and it that creates a lot of hostility, you know. So I think you're pulling off something pretty remarkable, because not only both you, your wife, your coaches together, you work together, and that's another thing that's usually tricky for people to be in the same business together.
Yeah.
because sometimes you bring your work home with you, and there's differences of opinion and all that.
It's not easy.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, I think we can't get Robert back. Oh wait, there he is. We got him back.
Robert.
Guys, you guys missed me. I don't know what happened. I was in the shade, like
Oh, it's okay.
side, but I was in the shade and my phone got hot. But like, I'm not in the sun. That's
Oh, it happened with you before.
Overheated.
In the shade.
You're in Las Vegas.
So, yeah. Well, for the record, it does happen now. So you got to watch the temperature of your phone, even if you're in the shade, which is insane. But yeah, that's the Vegas heat for you. I apologize.
But I finished right after. Like I finished and that's it. So it was like what I said.
And we start gossiping about you, Robert. So no worries.
Just talking lots of crap about Robert.
Man, it looks so different with this beard.
Yeah. I'm looking like a bear. Like that's what I keep hearing. My daughters think I look giant.
No, you look like a Viking. You know.
There we go.
Like,
that's
we
better.
got a nice axe. Like you know.
Yeah.
Like the helmet.
Yeah. There we go. If I ever fight with me again, that will be my stage name. But Andre, man, like this is some really good content, man.
Hey,
like,
this is amazing.
I just wanted to talk one thing with the Terere thing, like because to me Terere's always had like a warm place in my heart because he was such an amazing coach. I didn't always meet eye to eye with him. Like me and him had a lot of issues. Like we weren't always like best friends, you know. Yeah. Just very different people, which is, you know,
yeah, of course.
It is what it is. But you just said something that, like, it's a very good point. He was very young. It was a lot on someone who's very young when you think about the amount of power he was wielding, like the influence he had within, like, and not having anyone around him. That's the other thing. Like, he was a young guy, and he was on top of the world as a coach, as a practitioner, as a gym owner, right? Everything. Everyone wanted to be around him.
Mm-hmm.
And he's got no one to tell him, hey, man, slow down. Let's make some wise decisions here. You mentioned your wife, and I've noticed that that's huge in a fight in the career of any competitor / fighter, is to have that stabilizing force, because especially when they're young, they tend to make a lot of these mistakes of not knowing how to deal with, popularity, money, whatever, and I think that's a very good point.
And Robert, like I like to read too, and I started liking to read like after we meet. Now I read more than before. Before I didn't read much, but I started learning a lot. Like since like of course, like I have my wife and I have like people that loves me, that helps me. But also like I learned from books as well, right? So and there's one like like that book from Napoleon Hill, like Think and Grow Rich, right? And he mentioned that, he mentioned that when you are young, into your 40s, you're driven by your sexuality. You're driven about like having woman. Everything you do is to have sex. You're driven by that. Like you want a nice car, so you can get a more woman. You want like a nice shoes, wear like nice because you want to be attractive. And I believe like when you marry, like when you're young, not that like you're gonna like be separated off that group, you know because you start like, okay, so now I'm responsible. I want to have a family, so I want to be on this spot right here, right? And then you kind of like start setting like your goals for the future, right? Of those who are coming after you. But like until there, like you just like if you don't have someone that puts your own place, you're driven by that will, that desire, because this is really strong. It's the strongest desire that we have, within. Like, like it's nice to go and have fun. It's nice to go and party. Sex is really good, but it's very important too that this will not like be something that will need until the end of your life. Of course, like you can, but man, like what about the next generation? You'll be like so selfish if you just think about that moment right now. So I think like this is what I learned too, and also my beliefs. My beliefs. Like according to what I believe, I believe that if I do something wrong against my family or against my wife, if I make her sad, I know this will not be against her, but against someone that can see me wherever I go, which is God. I think this fear like helps me to keep like also like on this spot too. And I'm very thankful for that. And I can't deny that, of course, I worked really hard. I did all that, but that fear that you have of like stepping away off the path really helps you to keep like moving right. Not that you never gonna make a mistake because you're a sinner, you make mistakes. You can fail, but you know that he's there for you. Anytime. So I truly trust that, and Robert knows, like he knows me for a while, and he met me before, and, and since I'm walking on my faith in Jesus, I believe uh, things like things not like I'm not saying that get better, because a lot of people they judge a lot, like about your faith, especially if you mention the name of Jesus. But it's not easy, but I'm not ashamed of that. I truly believe that, and I know that.
You absolutely shouldn't be. I think everybody's faith is an important part of like who they are and how they handle things. And I was about to say pretty much what you were talking about with Terere and how it's kind of the downfall of him, and then how you were saying how the sex drive is so powerful, but being responsible with that is another thing. It just goes I always make the difference between going for a quick thrill versus building happiness, right? Like building happiness takes time. It takes effort, right? You have to build, it's like making a house. Whereas getting a quick thrill is like starting a bonfire and letting something burn. Oh, it's fun, but it's gone after the next day and you're left with nothing, right? So I think the things you're saying are true. Like when you have a good relationship with somebody, you're building happiness because you're building something that's long term and that's going to grow as you develop family. You have kids and they have kids and you've built something like a tree. Versus people who are just going out partying, going for fun, drugs, that diminishes. At the end of the day, you're left with nothing. So I think it's a key difference when people say I'm happy, but they don't understand. To me, there's a difference between thrill and happiness. And I think everything you've been talking about is about being happy and putting yourself in that mindset to be achieve more and to be overall fulfilled in life. So I think it's a great message that, that you provided.
I feel you guys are talking to me just because both you guys got married and are married, and I have 2 divorces on my back. I think you guys are just indirectly trying to sneak one in there.
No,
Get your act together. Get married again. I'm like, no. Oh man, no, but you're right. I think that everything you guys are saying makes perfect sense, and it does point out an aspect of the fight game that no one ever talks about. Everyone talks about the importance of the mind, technique, being in shape, obvious, right? But it's your environment, and I'm becoming more and more aware of this over time. Like, who are you around? The people who you are around plays a huge role in your career. Like, if you're around the wrong people, they will go out of their way to pull you down. You're around the right people. Dad, mom, brother, sister, wife, husband, like the right people, they will lift you up to like the heights that you didn't even know you could achieve.
hey,
So
I have a quote for you. For us, actually.
Okay.
Bad company, corrupt good character.
Yeah.
But you know where is that? In the Bible.
I believe that.
You know?
No, and I think there's a lot of wisdom to that, Andre, because you know, I mean, you can tell yourself all day, I'm a moral and good human being, and you may be, but the thing is, if you're in the wrong environment around the wrong people, their norm, their behavior, their culture becomes your behavior, whether you realize it or not. It seeps into your mind, and you become like them without realizing. So, like, I'm very aware of this because of my children. Like, I'm very aware, like, what they're watching, what they're thinking, what they're saying, who they're around, because, you know, children, you know, this, you're a father too, and they're like, it becomes, they are very influenced by their friends, by their peers. So who they're around plays a huge role in what kind of character they're going to develop later in life, right? I became aware of this late in life. I wish I had learned this lesson earlier. You know, like, I'm very aware of this now. I'm friends with everyone, you know me, of
course,
but like, I'm very like, you know, careful about who I let in my close circle these days, because I don't want anyone impacting my life in a negative way. Too much of that in my past, and moving forward, everyone who walks into my life has to be bringing something to the table that improves on me. And sometimes it's the truth, sometimes it's a hug, sometimes it's like, good job, Rob, sometimes it's like, you need help with this, I got your back. These little things, man, like, that's what builds happiness, man. It's just developing those sort of meaningful relationships, more important than titles, money, anything else you can think of, and it's surrounding yourself with the right people.
For sure. And Robert, like, think about like anything you look like around you. Like, look, your shirt, okay, for example. Like, I know it's a Zenit shirt by Kings, nice, right? I'm doing like the advertisement here for you. But, if you see like the tag inside, it says like how you're supposed to like take care of your shirt, correct?
Yeah.
If you grab like a car key, like inside the car, there's like something that tells you how to use the car.
Yeah.
If you see this like battery here off like camera, like inside the camera, there's something that tells you like how to use it, right?
Yeah.
But let me tell you, there's like a book that teaches you how to live life, you know? And that's the only thing that people most of people don't see, the manual of life, you know, like how I use my life. I know how to use the car. I know how to use this. And maybe sometimes you struggle in a way like to use your car because you don't read the manual, you know? But once you read it, you're like, okay, so that's how I use it. So I need to like spend my energy here instead of spending my energy there. right? So that's the way that I see things, you know.
No,
I think
and Andre,
everything there is a manual, and I believe completely. And this is being helping my life. I'm not saying here that I'm a superhero because anything can happen with me, right? I can pass through this world like really quick. Like I don't know if how long I'll live. Hopefully, I can live like until I see my grandchildren. But anything can happen with anyone. But I know one thing: like this is like a very short time of period that we're living that compare with the time that we live forever. You know what I mean? Like, and I think like the only thing we take from this life is what we live in this life. You know, what we live and we leave. So I think like that's the only thing we take. So, and I'm trying my best like to make sure like we keep moving that way, and especially during this time, it requires a lot of faith. You know. So.
I think it's well said, Andre, and I couldn't agree more. Like I think you know, everything you said is true, and I'm pretty sure Dave. I know Dave. I've gotten to know Dave well over the last couple of three. How long have you been here? Right, 2-3 years, Dave.
Since 2017, yeah, so 3 years.
Yeah, 3 years.
You're in Vegas right now?
Yes, I'm in Vegas here. Yeah.
I remember you're in Florida, right?
I was in Florida for most of my life. Yeah, I started moving around like in 2015. I actually lived in West Virginia for 2 years, believe it or not.
And me and Dave are starting a master's class for ADCC vets. So next time,
I'll be there.
Hey, no, but Andre, are you retired or not? I'm sure you've answered this question. What's the plan? You got nothing to prove. You know that, right?
Look, either I'm retired or I'm retired. Retarded. Either retire or become retired.
No, man, amazing career, man, for sure. You got nothing to prove, but I mean, obviously, people want to watch you grapple again. But at some point, man, you know, if there ever comes, you know, take my advice or not, but you know, if there ever comes a moment where you feel like, what is it that I should do, man? Just follow your heart. It's brought you very hard in life. Don't listen to people. You know, people a lot of times they want you to fight for them. It's not for you. It's for them. You know, and that's one reason why I stopped, because I realized at some point, like, my heart wasn't there anymore, and I was going to do it because people thought I should. And I'm like, nah, I'm not doing it for you, man. I always did it for my own personal reasons. And that's my advice to people. You got to do it because your heart's in the right place. In the second it's not, that's a really good moment to stop. That's my opinion.
Yeah. Thanks, Robert. Thanks. I think the same too, for sure. Right now I'm retired, you know.
Yeah.
So I'm good.
Good for you, man. Good for you. Dave, anything else, man, you want to add?
Man, I could ask Andre a ton of questions, but I know you got your day to go through, so we'll probably have to do this again sometime.
Go ahead. Like right now, I'm good.
You're good? Ahead. Okay. Well, I have to ask you.
You guys gonna post it? You guys gonna post this somewhere?
Yes, of course.
We'll share it.
Yeah, it'll be on iTunes and all the.
YouTube, this is the first one or what?
No, we've done now like 20, or I think 30 of them now.
Oh, cool. Where? Oh,
yeah.
Awesome.
So
this is so rad. See, I'm a gringo, man.
Practically a gringo. You're more gringo than I am these days. What are we talking about?
Well, I'll ask you about, like, it seems like you shifted a little bit as far as strategy in competition, and your wrestling skills became very obvious and very good, and to the point where, like, pretty much I don't think there was anybody out there that could out wrestle you, and it seemed to make winning for you a lot easier. Is there something in particular that drew you into wrestling, and when you started competing or whatnot? Because I mean, I've seen your matches with Cyborg, and Cyborg is a good stand-up wrestler himself, and you ran him over a bunch of times, and, you know, with Felipe the same thing. So it just seems you became a bull with the wrestling, you know?
Yeah.
So I just wanted to feel like where that come from and how much time did you invest in that?
Yeah, like if you watch my fights, like in the ADCC 2007, and then, man, you watch it, so silly. Like, I have no stance. It was ridiculous. When I watched that, I'm like, oh my God, what I was doing, you know? But even though I was taking people down, I don't know how, but I was, because I believe so much that I could take people down. For example, I got the third place match against Cacareco in 2007, and I took him down. But if you see, my wrestling was like so bad, my stance was all wrong. But then like I stopped and started training MMA, and then I noticed that the importance of my wrestling in order to make my jiu-jitsu works in MMA. And Robert did MMA, so he knows what I'm talking about here. Because if you don't know how to scramble, or if you don't know how to put the person down, how are you gonna do your jiu-jitsu? In MMA, people don't pull guard. You cannot just go there and pull people guard, all the time. It works maybe once, or twice, but not all the time. So then after I did my MMA career, after my MMA career, I started recognizing that the importance of wrestling for the nogi. And then I went to fight the ADCC 2009. My wrestling was a little bit better, but I was fighting Wesley, no wrestling. Is it Wesley? Wesley is the wrestling from Brazil. So in Brazil, everybody
I knew he was going to say that too.
Yeah.
That's what Brazilians say, Wesley.
So the Brazilians, they say Wesley. Oh, let's do Wesley. So I was doing Wesley back then, and my Wesley was okay, But then in 2011, I meet wrestling when I moved to the United States in 2010. So I did my whole camp with one of my students, Joe. Joe is not here anymore, so he passed away, unfortunately. He was my first black belt American. And back in the day, he was brown. And I say, Joe, can you help? Because he was a nerd, he was really like a nerd. I was like, man, like, we should train like this, we should train like that. Like, I like this, I like that. The no-gi is like this. So he was like into no-gi a lot. And I say, Joe, let's go. Man, 2 days later, he showed up with 3 wrestlers. One guy was like 250 pounds, like huge, like super tall. The guy was 6'5", 6'6". The guy was huge. And then he showed up with another guy was super small and fast. Right? It was Dave. This guy big. The big guy was Dave. The other guy was small, like really fast, was Justin, and he ended up being like my wrestling coach back then. And also he has Andir. Andir, he's in the army right now. But Andir, he looks like Toquinho. He was like Parayas, but like was Greco-Roman. And those guys started teaching me wrestling. So he brought like 3 body types of wrestling. One, the tall guy was like a lot about blast double. And the guy who was like Toquinho, he was more like a body locks and tossing you around like Greco. And this guy, the small guy, was like all about like shooting low, like ankle picks, like duck unders. So and then I started learning like wrestling just like a high school kid, So this guy Justin was a high school teacher. He used to teach wrestling at the high school here in San Diego. And he started helping me with that. Man, I trained with them. I started training. I trained jiu-jitsu as well. Started preparing myself, like learning like more different things about nogi. And Joe had some knowledge, and then he helped me with that. And then, man, I felt my jiu-jitsu, boom, my way of seeing nogi changed. And I started recognizing the importance of wrestling. And then ADCC 2011, if you watch, wow, it was a big change from like Wesley to wrestling, So, and then, man, like when everybody noticed, people like, man, even like Sean Williams was a guy like in the commentator, and he was like, man, Galvao wrestling looks sharp. Look at he's climbing the hips. Like, oh my God, he took Popovich down. Oh my God, like I took Popovich down like 2-3 times,
Yeah.
So it was crazy. Popovich is such an amazing wrestler. And then I started getting a lot of confidence. And then I fought Toquinho, and then I took him down a couple of times too during the fight, 20 minutes straight. And my conditioning was amazing. And I felt like so good. And to be honest, like I could do way better than that. But I was like 2 years and a half not competing jiu-jitsu. That was a little bit like, oh my God, I don't know how it's gonna happen, That was my first major tournament after I come back in jiu-jitsu scenes, And then I won double gold. And after that, I started prioritizing wrestling. And then in 2013, I found another coach. That's my coach right now, Coach Fred Leave. Man, think about a guy that's fast. It's Coach Fred Leave. Like he's like a lightning. Wow. But he's 45 years old, and he's like a lightning. And I imagine this guy with like 20 years old, 18 years old. He was like, man, like crazy fast, you know. And Coach Fred, he has a phenomenal uh, wrestling skills, and the way he teaches. Even though like I had another wrestling coach, and I have different wrestling in the meantime between 2011 and 2013 since Joe like left. Um, then I started like when I found Coach Fred, I said, man, this is the guy. Like the way he teaches, the way he showed me wrestling, and then he started helping me with everything. And then like you see like me improving over and over. And then, but then luckily, I think that no one from jiu-jitsu was doing wrestling like they do right now until they see me at the ADCC 2011. You know, I think like it changed the mindset of a lot of people about how to train for ADCC. You know, it's not about like only wrestling. You need everything. Like
Yeah.
some people think like, oh, it's not about right now. You need everything. But wrestling is such a great tool for you to apply your nogi, you know, to apply your game. And then after that, I just start like, you know, unfortunately, I didn't know how to fight nogi before. You know, I didn't have the vision of the nogi back in 2007, back in 2005 when I tried my first trials. You know, so just in 2011 when I was already almost 20, 27 years old, 28 years old, that I was like, oh, that's how jiu-jitsu, you know, that's how wrestling is. It's not wrestling, you know, it's not wrestling.
That's a good one. Because like it's funny because I as soon as you said Wesley, it's like, oh man, he's gonna be making fun of Brazilians. Because that's exactly how Brazilians say it. They can't say wrestling. It's
Yeah.
just the sound doesn't exist in Portuguese, so Wesley. But you know, you're right because me and David talked about this before as well. But it's ADCC rules are very wrestling leaning into it because I think when the Sheik came up with the rules, he wanted to do something somewhat neutral, right? Where he didn't take away the submissions, but he made it in a way where wrestlings would have like a good shot at winning if they, you know, like takedowns will took like a big be a big part of the game, and that's what ADCC rules is. That's why like you're seeing more and more wrestling. The realization you had in 2011, I think that deep down, we've always knew that. I think that deep down, it wasn't like 2005 you didn't know that, but in 2005 you had Wesley, not wrestling. So like you work with. I remember like watching tape of Mark Kerr taking shots in Pride, just rewinding and watching, and I'm like, okay, that's what I'm supposed to do, and I just practice on my own on my blue belts. But I never had a wrestling coach. So it's like, speaking for myself, I never neglected it. I always thought, man, this is important because I always wanted to fight MMA. But like, who do you learn it from? Like, Dave had the privilege. I think the guy like Dave is hurt in some ways because he described he didn't have a coach, him and his brother for the most part. But man, you had such an outstanding foundation, which is wrestling. And then, you know, you add some submissions to that. It's a quick transition to make if you do it seriously. Like we've seen this movie a million times. But no, I couldn't agree more, man. I enforce wrestling in my kids' class, my beginners' class, all my classes. Like wrestling is a part of the curriculum. I teach them to pull guard, but I always say if you can choose, it's better to be on top. So they don't get the mindset of pulling guard every time they lose a scramble.
Yeah. But if you think like the Sheik was really smart in making the rules, because the rules first were made to invite other grappling fights, right? And most of the grappling fights, most of them, only jiu-jitsu, I think you practice on the floor like a lot. Like over 90% is like only floor game. But like all the other grappling fights is pretty much like 60 to 70% standing. Like judo, wrestling, sambo, you know, they must be like standing on their feet a lot. And then he thought about like, okay, how are I gonna convince those guys to come to fight this event, you know, against guys that will be pulling guard and all that. Oh, let me give you advantage like for them. Like if you pull guard in the finals, is a -1. So the guy who's you don't need to take the guy down, you know. So and then he convinced it. But even though the jiu-jitsu practitioners like they did better because it's so much scramble, right? So and then you end up like seeing more jiu-jitsu fighters winning the ADCC more than the grappler judo fighters and all the other fights winning. So and I think like it's like when you fight MMA, right? And of course, MMA in the beginning was made. Also, the rule was made to bring everyone from all the martial arts like together, right? Like they say, okay, you can do whatever you want, do your art. There's no point, right? It's like when you go fight MMA and without knowing boxing, it doesn't matter if you are jiu-jitsu champion, whatever. You can be like the best, but if you don't know like how to be understand, how to like absorb the punch, you know, how to defend the kick, you know, you're gonna be in trouble. It's the same like when you fight ADCC. If you don't know like stand up, you know, it's gonna be hard on you. It's gonna be tough, you know. And if you think about all the champions, all of them pretty much know something like, you know, on top, you know, standing. All of them like have good takedowns, you know. It is important.
Yeah, I
Absolutely.
couldn't agree. Well, let me see, Dave. What else, man? This guy's got a lot of things to share. I'm trying to think. I'm trying to ask them like very unique questions here. I got a question for you.
Oh,
Okay. Well, why don't you you and all the Atos guys just join Zenith? Like I'm thinking,
wow.
why not?
Because you were waiting for the other way around.
I had to ask. You let's think of something.
We're waiting for you, waiting for Kabaka. We're waiting.
No, but you know one thing. I was given like an interview the other day, and like they came up like the best team of all time, right? Because one of my hobbies now is to study jiu-jitsu history, and I can think, man, Carlson Gracie, and I can think like Alliance for a period there.
Yeah.
But then I remember like everything that came out of Master / TT later Brazza, right? Like that group. That would have been, us, Zenith, me, Cavaca, Atus, Checkmat, Brazza, which is still around with Comprito and Felipe and, those guys, and Telly's as well. Like, that was, like, we would have been by far, because you guys by
Which is
yourself
such a
already
great
clicked.
group, huh?
It was an amazing group of people, and it's so bad that, like, I sometimes I wonder, like, why couldn't we keep it together? And I think I know the reasons why, but it was, as far as like talent goes and like tournament results, I think about it'd be difficult for any team to ever match that. I think your team comes very, very close. You by yourself and your guys, I think so. But like I'm not saying this because I was part of it. I hope it doesn't sound that way. But like it was a very special group of. It wasn't that we weren't that many. It was like a small group of people, and we did so well in tournaments. And I have a lot of good memories.
Yeah.
But it's that whole team thing is such a complex issue in jiu-jitsu, man. It gets, as soon as there's success and money involved, things get complicated, and it's hard to separate, the two. I wish we could easily, get over that hurdle as friends, as teammates, but it gets very difficult, man. You do a really good job keeping it together, by the way. Like I watch you from afar, but obviously successful. But it's not an easy one, man. Like I don't know.
It's not easy. It's hard.
Absolutely. Well, let me ask you, what do you think about the, in recent years, we've had a lot of like the submission only tournaments versus point tournaments. Well, what is your take on that? Like, do you think the submission only tournaments bring value, or is it kind of like just splitting up the sport?
Yeah, I have my opinion. Like maybe at the beginning it's something like, oh wow, this is different, But once like you're doing that rule set for a couple of years, people start figuring out ways to fight under the rules. At the end of the day, the athlete he fights under the rule, and the one that will get the prize, the crown or the medal, is the one that fights accordingly, to the rules.
Yeah.
So you can come up with a new rule. Maybe in the beginning you'll be like, oh wow, this is so different, But later on, like people start like, oh okay, so to be good in this rule, I gotta do this and that, And you see like right now the submission only tournaments, you see a lot of fights where it doesn't end up in a submission. It end up like who escaped fast. Right?
Yeah.
So it's just like a matter of training and adapting yourself accordingly, So I don't think like you can create like jiu-jitsu is so complex. Like you can create like so many rules in jiu-jitsu. So many rules. Jiu-jitsu is the MMA, is the vale tudo of grappling.
Yeah.
So you can get any other rules from any other sport, apply here and there, make something different, but later on I think people find a way to win by the rule. How many times the IBJJF changed the rule?
Every year.
They change the rule like every month,
Yeah.
So it changes all the time. So you gotta keep up. Like it's like like when your phone needs to update.
Yeah.
Right. It's like IBJJF you need to update your rule set every month. if you don't keep up, you kind of like get old, you know. So
Same with judo. Judo's been updating their rule sets for 100 years. Like they still haven't found that perfect recipe. Like they're still constantly making tweaks to the rules because
yeah, it's grappling.
competitors, you're right, competitors always find a way to exploit that to their favor. It's just human nature.
Yeah, we find ways, man. It's crazy. We find techniques.
Of course.
You know. But I like that has like different rules. I like that. I like when they fight in the cage. I like when they fight in the ring. I like when they do sub only. I like when they don't do sub only. I like when they do no time limits. I like everything. It's fun, you know. But people always find a way.
I like the cage idea more than anything. To me, the worst part about grappling matches is out of bounds.
Oh yeah,
I have history with that too. So,
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
but whenever you have to restart something, it gets weird. You know what I mean? I rather like, and it's not realistic because there's nowhere out there where you can just run out of bounds. There's always a wall somewhere, so you might as well put it up and use it. I mean, to me,
Yeah.
like obviously, like in MMA, it's a really important part of the fight is how to control the cage and score your takedowns and all that. I don't see why we wouldn't have that element in grappling as well. Now, I see in tournament formats, it doesn't make sense because you're not going to have like 20 cages. So I get that. But like in super fights and stuff like that, when possible, I think it's a nice add because you would also avoid a lot of overtimes that way because people will be getting taken down, you know?
Yeah.
A lot of times,
Doesn't matter how big is the mat, you know, it doesn't matter. Like I was like couple days ago, I was watching Roger versus Buchecha. Man, they fought in a huge mat area, and even though they went out of bounds a couple times, you know, it's crazy. You know, it doesn't matter like how big is the mat. Like
Yeah.
we're always gonna go outside. You know, it's all, you gotta put like you gotta have the Rorion Gracie mindset back in the day when you thought about putting alligators, you know,
Yeah.
like outside of the cage. You know, I think that's the only way people are not gonna fall outside.
That would definitely solve it. You know.
Yeah, I think so too.
But I agree with about the cage thing. It's interesting because it forces you to wrestle upwards. Like cage wrestling is like it's a category in itself. It's not jiu-jitsu, it's not wrestling. It's its own category. But it also prepares guys for MMA, which is something that's somewhat being lost in the younger generations of jiu-jitsu. Like they're not interested in MMA.
I have a question for you guys. Do you think the wrestlers they're more well prepared for MMA after their career or than the jiu-jitsu fighters? What do you think? Like you think they're more well prepared than jiu-jitsu fighters for MMA to make a transition? What do you think?
Well, I mean, I came from wrestling and went into MMA and all that. I think there's a few things that can't come to that. One, wrestling that builds that toughness as part of the program.
Yeah.
And there's somewhat striking in wrestling as well. Most people, if you don't wrestle, you don't know, but cross faces, clubbing, you're getting hit. And I broke my nose 3 times in wrestling. I've only broken it once in fighting.
Yeah.
You know, so like you're used to getting hit, taking punishment. You have conditioning, so you have those things. But at the same time, not every wrestler makes a good fighter. There's guys who don't know how to do takedowns once you start throwing punches. I mean, you look at a guy like Dan Henderson, who's a very successful fighter, but he didn't show really good wrestling in his fights. He gets taken down all the time. And I always watch him like, how is this guy who's like an incredible wrestler? But
It's that kid Pico, right? Pico, what's his name?
yeah, Aaron Pico. Yeah, he hasn't done like he looks like he's good, but man, he just keeps getting tagged. You know,
So,
like
it looks like it's unfortunate. Like it's an unfortunate thing. I want to see that kid like succeeding so bad.
yeah.
I mean,
You know what it is. My opinion on this whole discussion has always been something like, I think that BJJ obviously is a more complete art for the simple fact that everything that is legal in wrestling is legal in BJJ minus the suplex. You can't suplex someone on their neck. That's the only thing in wrestling that's illegal in BJJ. Everything else is legal. So wrestling fits inside BJJ. However, I think that wrestlers hyper emphasize a few aspects of grappling that BJJ guys from a very young age are taught to. It's okay to be on your back. It's okay to lose scrambles. And there's a conditioning and toughness element that I think that wrestlers come out of, college as tougher individuals in general, because it's a different kind of mindset as to the privatized sector in Brazil. Like, for example, like people are teaching for a membership, right? In collegiate wrestling, it's like, man, you want to stay in college, you want a place to sleep, you want to eat, well, you better do what we tell you to do. So it's more of a military structure. And there's also a selection process that goes on in wrestling that begins at a very young age. You end up with the best athletes, right? You're a smart kid, you do spelling bee, Rubik's Cube, and math. You're athletic, you go to the football team, you go to the wrestling. It's what the Soviets would call the pyramid, right? The U.S. uses that system as well. It's a pyramid. You end up with all the athletes, and then the very ones at the top go to college on a scholarship, right?
So do you think like wrestlers, they're more prepared for MMA?
In generally speaking, yes. In general terms, they're more prepared for MMA. Not because of jiu-jitsu as an art, but how jiu-jitsu is taught and practiced. There's a difference.
Right.
As an art, BJJ is more. But we are teaching it in a way that is not it is not in tune with how MMA takes place.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's kind of changing a bit, though. I mean, if you asked this question like 20 years ago, I would say obviously wrestling. I think now, though, like you see, like because of guys like you, Andre, who have made wrestling a lot more popular, there's a lot more people who are now teaching wrestling earlier on. I think, and before, I remember when I would watch jiu-jitsu tournaments, they were very slow paced. And like, I remember I was actually at I think, was it the Pan Ams in 1999. And there would be people who would like just grab each other and then slowly sit to guard. And like the referee was talking to them. And I was coming from wrestling, I'm like, man, what the hell is going on? This is not competing. They're like having a conversation mid-match, you know?
Yeah.
But I think the intensity has changed a lot more, you know? So I think now jiu-jitsu has athletes, right? There are people who are conditioning and they're doing strength and conditioning and they're training. So I think that the next generation it will probably be better prepared, you know, because in the beginning it's kind of like early UFCs. There weren't any athletes. There were just guys who did martial arts, and there was a lot of tough guys, but there weren't athletes. Now in the UFC, it's all athletes. They're all people who are physical specimens who've trained their whole lives for this particular thing. Jiu-jitsu has athletes now, right? There's people. You're not getting into ADCC just because you're good. Like you have to be a specimen. You have to be really well conditioned. You have to have great technique, good coach behind you. So I guess it depends on who you're like. Who are we grabbing as the base model for the jiu-jitsu athlete? Is it the guy coming from your team, or is it just like somebody from anywhere? Someone coming from your team, I'm saying they're probably better prepared than your average wrestler would be. You know, so I think that's evolved a lot. You know.
Yeah. I think right now, like maybe the next generation of wrestling also train jiu-jitsu. I have a lot of kids in my gym that they compete both. They compete wrestling and jiu-jitsu. And I believe like both sports, like they help each other.
For sure.
You know, you can become a great wrestler if you do jiu-jitsu. Like you can deal better with the scrambles, I believe.
Yeah.
You know, it helps a lot. And also you can become a great jiu-jitsu fighter if you have a good wrestling too. You know, it helps a lot with your takedown, your stance, like your speed, your explosion. And the reason that I think that the wrestlers they're a little bit more well prepared than jiu-jitsu fighters is because they always fight no gi. They always compete no gi. That's the first thing, you know. Also like that, the punch side as well that you talk about, and also the matches has like intervals, you know, has that minute break, right? It's 1 minute 30 seconds break, so it definitely helps you to get the stamina to come back to the next round. Where in jiu-jitsu you fight like especially when you're a black belt. And most of people that makes transition from jiu-jitsu to MMA, they're black belts. So they fight 10 minutes, you know, like a lot of rounds, 10 minutes. The fight's a little bit slower, you know, it's with the gi, you know. So I think like it's definitely like, of course, one art help other, you know, we help each other. Like wrestling helps jiu-jitsu, jiu-jitsu helps wrestling. But like if you one guy do pure jiu-jitsu and the other guy do pure wrestling, I think like the guy who has pure wrestling, he's just a little bit more like, you know, a little bit more ahead, you know. So, and you see that in MMA. So it's not like it's not like a just something that we say here. The statistics say that.
You know the one thing that's a problem in jiu-jitsu too is that in jiu-jitsu, because the way the rules are, and I've always been critical of the rules. I think we've never found like a martial art kind of rule. It's very sport oriented, but in jiu-jitsu, you're allowed to win very tactically. Like a lot of strategy, you guys win, right? In wrestling, it's not that there's no strategy, but there's athleticism will out like you have to be in shape. You're gonna have to actually go to war with people. Whereas in jiu-jitsu, more and more now you get away with wrapping people up in a lapel, 50-50, boom, fight's over. You know, like, and that right there, obviously, who's going to translate better to MMA? The guy who's getting used to winning 50-50 with a lapel, or the guy that's used to sprawling, grinding, and, you know, winning every single scramble? Like, one of them, in a sense, wrestling is a lot closer to MMA, even though it's far less complete.
Well, it's a good point that you both bring. One, with Andre, the fact that there are rounds and they're short rounds increases the intensity by many levels, right? And then to the second point, Rob, what you bring is also that you can't really stay in a position for too long. Wrestling calls stalling very quickly. I remember, like, after doing jiu-jitsu and MMA, I went back to do a freestyle wrestling tournament. And I got called for stalling within the first 5 seconds of the match. Because literally, we shook hands, we go, and I backed up a little bit, and the ref went, boom, stalling. I'm like, man, I'm just getting started. I just took a back step. You know, they were already calling for stalling. You know, so the pacing is very different. And even if you have a good position, if you just hold it, they're going to stand you back up. You got to always be moving. So it creates a lot more scrambles, which requires a lot more endurance, explosive endurance. Where, like you say, Andre, you have a ADCC match, it's 20 minutes long. You can't go the whole way. You're going to gas. So you have to go slow, right? And MMA is 3 5-minute rounds, or it's like a middle ground. It's not very long, but it's not
5 minutes, right?
Yeah, it's not very short either. But
it's a white belt time.
Exactly, and your pacing is very different. And there's still tactics that go. You always see people look for that takedown within the last 30 seconds, you know, to finish the round on top and score. So, but yeah, in that sense, strategically, I think wrestlers have an upper hand because they are used to those type of games. Whereas in jiu-jitsu, you wouldn't like wait the last 30 seconds to score your takedown necessarily. You're probably going to try to score it earlier on.
Mm-hmm. I agree 100%.
Interesting, man. Lots of. I think that we got to come up with a rule set that like brings the best of both worlds, man. Like I've been talking about it for a long time. I've sat down with like every single promoter on the planet trying to convince them. I'm like, man, you want to come up with the best rule set for jiu-jitsu? Listen to the competitors. The competitors know. You know, they never do that. Like very rarely they actually sit the competitors down and go, what do you guys think is best, right? Yeah. So I think that's you know, but like I always dreamed of like, you know, creating a wrestling with submissions. I know it sounds like, oh, we have that with ADCC. Like, man, there's so many things I would add to that rule. I think we can make it way more dynamic, more entertaining, and more martial art oriented, right? So where jiu-jitsu practitioners would easily make a transition to MMA if they ever wanted to, right? But everyone's got their own ideas. I'm no exception to the rule.
Yeah.
No, I agree. I mean, we talked about it before. I just always felt like the problem with the ADCC rules is that it's very difficult to score.
Yeah.
Right. And like the harder it is to score, the more likely you're going to go into overtime or you're going to get these long stalling matches. Whereas if you make it easier to score, then points rack up, and then there's more incentive to action because you're going to be behind and you have to score back. And I think the biggest thing is that the turtle loop below. You know, like anytime someone turtles, it negates the scoring position. Like, you know, you could take someone down, they turtle for 3 seconds, roll back, nothing. That, I feel like if you took that away, it changes a lot. And I think a second thing is out of bounds. If someone goes out of bounds, it should be like how they're doing in wrestling now, where they get a point for pushing you out of bounds. Because what's going to happen now, that means I can't back away. I have to stay in the middle. And when people are closer, takedowns can work a lot easier. Yeah. It's really hard to take someone down when they don't want to let you get close. Yeah. And when there's no penalty for going out of bounds, it's like you have very little chance of scoring on somebody unless they make a mistake, you know. In MMA, most of our takedowns occur in the cage just because that's you run as far as you can, and now you got stuck. I think just those two things makes a huge difference, and you will see a lot of scoring happen if you took out that turtle loophole, score out of bounds points. I think that makes a big difference. Yeah. Without changing a lot fundamentally. Those are two very things.
Only given at 1 point where if you push your opponent outside, that would be a huge difference. You know?
Yeah. You imagine, I mean, you run people out of bounds so many times, you would be racking up points left and right? Yeah. But at the same time, people probably wouldn't let that happen. They would have to try to stay closer, and then you would probably take them down anyways. But like, it's much more satisfying, I think, from a spectator point of view, you know, to see like, oh, this guy won by like 4 points or 6 points versus he won by ref advantage. It's like, you know, I think it does an injustice because I feel when we're scoring points, the idea is we're supposed to be rewarding the guy who's pressing the action and doing technique who's executing. But when you don't score anything and you lead it to advantage, it looks like it was a coin toss, you know? So it doesn't reward the competitor for taking the risks, because every time you go for a technique, there's a risk you could fail and go back.
Mm-hmm. True.
That's true. It's a very good suggestions. Guys, unfortunately, I got to get going, man. I got a meeting in 10 minutes. I got to get ready for. But, Andre, I want to thank you so much for the opportunity, man. We've been playing phone tag for a couple of weeks now with this interview, but I really wanted to pick your brain. And, man, I wanted to congratulate you on your career. I've been a fan since I've known you. You know, you've always been one of the best competitors in the game. And like they said, you know, you could make the argument you're the GOAT. So, man, congratulations on an amazing career. You, your students, your team. And, you know, you've been to the gym before, but if you're ever back in the gym, you're always going to be welcome here. And, you know, would love to have you join the ADCC Masters Club.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Hey, it was a great pleasure. I feel so comfortable. I feel so good here, talk with you guys, you know. Robert's been a great friend for a long time, you know. I know him for a long time. And I thank you so much, Robert. I know, like, I was like a little busy, you know, but then I say, okay, now let me do this, and fortunately I did. You know, I feel really good. Like after we talk here, I feel really good about like everything that we mentioned here. You know, it was amazing to be with you guys. David too, thank you so much for everything, putting your thoughts right here, and also it's amazing. Definitely, I learned a lot, you know, after this meeting with all you guys, and I appreciate everything. You know, I just appreciate like the time that you guys reserve, like just to talk and do this interview. I appreciate that. I feel really good. Thank you.
Thank you, Andre. And just one last thing for you. Let the people know here where they can find you online on social media, where they can learn more about you.
Yeah, so they can find me on Atos Online, so atosbjjonline.com. Right there, we have over 3,500 techniques. I'm putting like some courses right there. And you guys can also find me on social media, Galvao BJJ, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Most like Instagram, right? The gram. So Galvao BJJ. So thank you so much. And we have great things coming, you know, so you guys will know soon. And hopefully this can be great for the jiu-jitsu community. I'm doing my best here still, even though we're like locked.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. All right. And I guess then.
Hug. Now is the hug. Like this.
Virtual hug.
Let's
Thank you.
See you.
Bye.